You know Isaac Newton as the genius who discovered gravity, the father of physics, the man who changed science forever. But what if I told you that Newton spent more time decoding biblical prophecies than writing the Principia? That he believed the world would end in the year 2060? That he was so paranoid about rivals stealing his work, he delayed publishing his greatest discoveries for decades? What if the man who gave us the laws of motion was also slowly poisoning himself in a secret lab, chasing the dream of turning lead into gold? This is the story they don't tell you in textbooks. The hidden life of Isaac Newton, and it's way stranger than you think. We love our heroes simple: Einstein with wild hair, Tesla with his pigeons, Newton with his apple. But real genius, it's messy, it's obsessive, and sometimes it's dangerous. Because the same mind that could calculate the orbit of planets was also convinced it could predict the end of the world. The same hands that built the first reflecting telescope were stained with mercury from illegal alchemical experiments. Newton wasn't just a scientist. He was a man at war, with rivals, with the church, with his own sanity. And understanding that war, it changes everything we think we know about how great ideas are born. So let's rewind. Back to a cold winter in 1642, to a premature baby no one expected to survive. Isaac Newton was born on Christmas Day, 1642, in a tiny village called Woolsthorpe. His father had died 3 months earlier. The baby was so small they said you could fit him in a quart pot. He wasn't supposed to make it, but he did. And then when Isaac was 3 years old, his mother remarried and left. She moved in with her new husband and left little Isaac behind with his grandmother. According to some accounts, Newton carried that abandonment his entire life. Years later, he made a list of his sins, a strange confessional document, and one of the entries: threatening my father and mother Smith to burn them and the house over them. His stepfather's name was Smith. Notice this: we're not talking about a well-adjusted kid. We're talking about someone who learned early that the world could be cold. That trust was dangerous. That to survive, you had to be smarter, harder, more relentless than everyone else. And he was. Fast forward to 1665. Newton is a student at Cambridge, not a star student, just another young man trying to make sense of philosophy and mathematics. And then, the Great Plague hits London. Cambridge shuts down. Everyone goes home. For most people, a disaster. For Newton, the most productive 2 years of his life. He retreats to his family farm in Woolsthorpe, alone, no professors, no distractions. Just Isaac, his thoughts, and an obsessive need to understand everything. Here's what he figures out in those 2 years. The foundations of calculus, he called it fluxions. The laws of motion, the nature of light and color, proving that white light is made of a spectrum. And yes, the beginnings of his theory of universal gravitation. Now about that apple. Did it happen? Probably something like it. Newton himself told the story late in life. An apple falls. He wonders, why does it fall down? Why not sideways? Why not up and then the leap? What if the same force pulling the apple to the ground is also pulling the moon toward Earth? But here's the twist. Newton doesn't publish any of this. Not yet. Because Newton has a problem. He doesn't trust anyone. Let's zoom in on what Newton actually did during those years, because this is where it gets wild. First, light. Everyone at the time thought light was pure and white. Newton takes a prism, splits sunlight into a rainbow, and then, here's the genius part, he takes a second prism and recombines the colors back into white light. Boom, proof. White light isn't simple, it's a mix. Then he builds the first reflecting telescope. Why? Because regular telescopes had this problem called chromatic aberration. Colors blurred around the edges. Newton solves it by using mirrors instead of lenses. The Royal Society is blown away. They invite him to become a member. He's 29 years old. He's famous, and he hates it. Because with fame comes scrutiny. Robert Hooke, one of the most powerful scientists in England, criticizes Newton's work on light. Hooke's wrong, but he's loud about it. Newton's response? He withdraws, he stops publishing, he goes silent for years, and in that silence, he starts diving into something much darker. Okay, here's where the story gets really interesting. While Newton is famous for physics, what he's actually spending most of his time on is theology, biblical prophecy, ancient texts. He writes over 1 million words on religion, more than on science. And he's not just reading for fun, he's trying to crack a code. He believes the Bible contains hidden mathematical truths about the structure of the universe and the timeline of history. Newton becomes convinced of two things. 1. The doctrine of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit as one God, is wrong. He thinks it's a corruption added centuries after Jesus. 2. He can calculate the date of the apocalypse, and here's the number he lands on: 2060. Now, to be fair, he's careful about this. He doesn't say the world ends in 2060. He says it's the earliest date when a new era could begin, based on his reading of the book of Daniel. But here's the problem. If anyone finds out he rejects the Trinity, he's done. In 17th century England, that's heresy. He could lose everything. So, Newton hides it. He writes in code, he tells no one. Think about the pressure. You're one of the most famous minds in Europe, and you're sitting on a secret that could destroy you. No wonder he didn't trust people. But wait, there's more. While Newton is decoding revelation, he's also running an illegal chemistry lab. Alchemy was banned in England. But Newton doesn't care. He's obsessed with transmutation, the idea that you can turn base metals like lead into gold. And he's not doing this casually. He's running experiments for decades. Here's where it gets dark. Alchemy involves a lot of toxic substances: mercury, lead, arsenic, and Newton. He's tasting them. That's how alchemists tested their compounds back then. And according to some historians, it catches up with him. In 1693, Newton has a breakdown. He stops eating, he stops sleeping. He writes paranoid letters to friends, accusing them of betrayal. One letter to the philosopher John Locke says, "Being of opinion that you endeavored to embroil me with women, I beg your pardon." Locke has no idea what he's talking about. Was it mercury poisoning? Was it exhaustion? Was it the weight of all those secrets finally crushing him? We don't know for sure. But for over a year, Newton basically disappears, and when he comes back, he's different. Now let's talk about Newton's enemies. Because if there's one thing Newton was really good at, besides physics, it was holding a grudge. Robert Hooke. We already mentioned him. Hooke criticized Newton's work on light. Newton never forgave him. When Hooke died, Newton allegedly removed Hooke's portrait from the Royal Society. Some say Newton delayed publishing the Principia until Hooke was dead. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, the German mathematician who independently invented calculus. Newton accused him of stealing the idea. A bitter, decades-long feud erupted. Newton even used his power at the Royal Society to rig an investigation, declaring himself the winner. Was Leibniz guilty? Probably not. But Newton didn't care. He wanted total credit. By the early 1700s, Newton isn't just a scientist anymore. He's a politician. He's master of the Royal Mint, reforming England's currency, catching counterfeiters, sending some of them to the gallows. He's powerful, he's ruthless, and he's still deeply, deeply paranoid.
They are worthless, I say, worthless!
You assured me the price would rise!
Get these shares sold now before we lose everything!
If you're still with me, hit that like button, because we're about to get to the most ironic twist in Newton's entire life. And trust me, you don't want to miss this.
Give us back our money, Newton! We demand justice! You ruined us!
So Newton's rich now, famous, powerful. Surely he's making smart decisions, right? Wrong. In 1720, England goes crazy over something called the South Sea Company. It's a bubble, a speculative frenzy. Everyone's buying stock, convinced they'll get rich. Newton buys in, then he gets nervous and sells, making a nice profit. But then the price keeps going up, and Newton can't stand it. He watches everyone else getting richer, so he buys back in, big, and then the bubble bursts. Newton loses 20,000 pounds, the equivalent of millions today. Later, he supposedly said, "I can calculate the motions of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." It's almost poetic, isn't it? The man who could predict the orbit of planets couldn't predict a stock crash. So what do we make of all this? Newton died in 1727 at age 84. He was buried in Westminster Abbey, a national hero. His work became the foundation of modern science. The Principia is still one of the most important books ever written. But here's what makes Newton so fascinating. He was never just a scientist. He was a mystic, an alchemist, a theologian, a bureaucrat, a man convinced he could talk to God through mathematics. The economist John Maynard Keynes once said this about Newton. He was not the first of the age of reason. He was the last of the magicians. And that's the paradox. Newton invented the tools of rational science, calculus, the laws of motion, the scientific method, while simultaneously chasing ancient secrets, biblical codes, and the philosopher's stone. So which Newton is real? Maybe both. Maybe that's the point. Here's the question I want to leave you with. What if the obsession is part of the genius? What if you can't have the Principia without the paranoia? What if the same mind that unlocks gravity is the same mind that believes in prophecy and alchemy? We want our heroes clean, simple, rational. But maybe the greatest leaps forward come from people who are willing to go to places the rest of us won't, who chase ideas so strange, so dangerous, that they risk everything, reputation, sanity, life, just to see if they're true. Newton wasn't perfect. He was petty, secretive, and sometimes cruel. But he was also the man who looked at a falling apple and saw the universe. And maybe that's enough.